What is going on, guys? Welcome into Nebraska football, the voice of college football. And week one has come and gone. Nebraska has started the season 1-0. We can all breathe a sigh of relief after that one. And I'm going to take you through everything today, from some PFF numbers, the offensive breakdown, the defensive breakdown, some of the key players, some of the players that probably could step up a little bit more in the next game, along with my overall synopsis of this game, pros, cons, the whole nine. So if you do like what I do here on this channel, you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, dropping a like. So much of a like really helps me out. So thank you all so much for those that do drop a like. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And thank you for everybody who rocks with the channel each and every week, each and every video. So without further ado, let's just dive right into it. So yeah, like I said, Nebraska coming away 2017, the game sealing interception there. And listen, years past, we know how the movie ends. One score game, Huskers find a way to lose it. It's been the story. We're tired of hearing it this time. We didn't. Closed it out, and all things considered, that matters, right? That's a sign of progress, the biggest sign of progress that we wanted to see. Now, let's dive into a little bit of the other things, a few of the other things, because some of what I said was maybe a little misconstrued on my post game and on X for that matter. So I'm going to take you through, and I'm very honest in my opinions, and I don't deviate from my opinion. So I'm just going to kind of give you my thoughts. You can drop your thoughts in the comments. Let me know if you agree. Let me know if you disagree. Just be respectful about it. I love having a conversation, but just be cool about it. But let's go ahead and talk about the offense first off, and where else to start but with Dylan Raiola. So talking about Dylan Raiola just overall. He was efficient. He was accurate, right? 36 of 46, 78.6 completion percentage. He actually had an adjusted completion percentage of 83.6, sorry. 2 drops kind of hurt that a little bit for 243 yards and 1 touchdown and no interceptions. So one of the things to know about Raiola is he really thrived in rhythm. And people are talking about the over-the-top part of this offense not being there and him taking the underneath, but you got to think this is a team that plays heavy zone defense. They're trying to keep everything in front of them, and Nebraska was just taking what the defense gives. And in the short game, he was surgical with that. 23 of 26 on throws under 10 yards, right? Perfect on screens and just the quick hitting passes. But under pressure, he was just 2 of 5 passing under duress with 2 turnover worthy throws. Okay, so 5 of those 5 throws, 2 were turnover-worthy throws, and we know what 2 of those were. Only 4 yards total with the 25.3 grade when pressured, when under duress. So that is one of the aspects that will need to definitely improve. His average depth of target was 5.2 yards. Again, just indicating that he was throwing, the shorter passes on the underneath, just taking what the defense gives you. And coming into the game, me and Brian had talked about that was what was going to be going on. He was going to the whole game plan was going to be take what the defense gives you, try to get the chains moving, keep them moving, and just march your way down the field. Now, talking about overall with our playmakers, Heinrich Haarberg graded out as the best on offense, albeit he had a little under 30 snaps, so a lot of these guys had more snaps than him. But 78.5 overall grade, 81.4 run block grade, just his versatility stood out. He was there and effective in a lot of different ways. Lindenmeyer, I think he had 68 snaps. He had the same amount of snaps, I believe, as Dane Key. So Lindenmeyer was out there and very effective, very, very efficient as well. But him and Dane Key both were steady in their blocking assignments and their route running. Key came in clutch on that 4th down with the touchdown on that nice little it was a really good call there in the end zone. That's what we missed in previous, just those little creative wrinkles. And it was a very simple play, but again, just the execution was there. And a guy like Dane Key, is a guy I talked about, was going to be one of the key pieces of having that red zone target, a guy who can just be able to make a quick cut on a route and be able to create separation. That's something we were missing last year. And we saw that a little bit more with these guys this time around, with your Dane Key, your Isaiah Hunter. Those guys were creating separation more than we saw from any of our receivers last year. So it was a beautiful sight. The route running was excellent by Dane Key, man. I love his route running. Cannot be more impressed with it. Lindenmeyer as well. Great route running there. Emmett Johnson, of course, our workhorse back, and the workhorse he was. 25 carries, 108 yards, 4.3 yards per carry, 3 runs of 10 or more yards, 61 yards after contact. So he was running hard, running through contact. And looking at kind of the guys in front of him, the O-line, Justin Evans and Rocco Spindler, they graded really solid in protection. Left tackle rotation, Gatula and Pritchett, it was a little inconsistent at times. However, Pritchett did grade out pretty well. Gatula graded out okay, but they both struggled a little bit in the run blocking in the pass sets. So a little bit more consistency there from that left tackle position will come in handy. But again, I think these two guys are going to battle it out there. And Pritchett did have success there, but those penalties, those are the mental lapses that we talked about that held him back previously. So got a lot to clean up there. And Matt Rhule talked about that coming into the season. So going over the rushing total for the team. So 120 total team rushing yards, 33 attempts, 3.6 yards per carry. So we'd like that to improve again. Just a tough interior defense against those guys. So naturally our success came on the edges. On the left end, 9 yards per carry, the right edge, between 4.5 to 5 yards per carry. The interior runs got stuff, the 1.3 yards per carry up the middle. So it was going to be a tough day trying to get stuff going, especially when you can't run the ball over the middle. But what it did do is that kind of is what opened up the middle of the field, when we kind of did have to tack the edges a little bit because we could not get those guys, drawn down necessarily through the inside run game. That's where that, those passes outside and kind of spread that defense out. And that's what allowed Nebraska to be as successful as they were over the middle with that 0 to 9 yards right over the middle. I think it was 16 of 19 in just that part of the field alone. That is the part that they want to target right there, that middle of the field. The middle of the field was the absolute bread and butter of this offense. The short middle and at the the short and intermediate middle was the entire basically offense of this team for the most part. So again, I talked about it before, but that middle of the field, intermediate, short, middle of the field is going to be a big, big part of this team. So it's nice to see them have success there. Just want a little bit more success on the outsides. But again, you're going to get that when you get a little bit more of a man coverage mix as opposed to just zone. Again, with that 3 high safety over the top, stuff like that, it's really hard to get beyond those zones, especially when they're not really kind of biting down on that run when they're stopping it up the middle. So moving over to the defensive side. Now, Vincent Shavers was an absolute monster. No surprise there. 92 coverage grade. Allowed just 1 catch for 1 yard, 2 stops and a pass breakup. Okay. Marcus Buford, steady deep safety, 85 coverage grade. Erased big plays, made huge plays. It's one of those things where we finally saw short memory from our secondary. We had Deshaun Singleton, very physical, 3 stops, didn't allow a single pass over 7 yards. Williams Nwaneri, he flashed his 5-star potential. Again, 2 QB hits, 2 hurries, disrupted. Even when he didn't finish with sacks, he was disrupting, and that's what we want from him. Lined up, they were lined up outside the end pretty much the entirety of the game. Williams, I think, maybe moved in over the defensive tackle once. I think I saw one time. So overall, feel pretty good with how the secondary looked, especially with guys like Buford stepping up, Singleton stepping up. Those guys like Shavers, we knew we were going to step up. Williams Nwaneri, we knew of his potential. And we heard good things, but it was nice to see him flash in this game. So now the good, but not so great. So those were kind of the big standouts. Let's go with the good, the not great. Hartzog, strong tackler, but did give up a TD in coverage, right? Again, I'm being nitpicky. Andrew Marshall, solid tackler, but 11 yards per reception. So allowed a little bit of chunk plays. Dason McCullough, was good. Saw it against the run, a little inconsistent when dropping into coverage, but I think he'll clean up on that. Dason McCullough, I'm not really worried about any of those guys. But now the concerns here a little bit, not too much, just linebacker coverage. Javen Wright gave up 5 receptions for 60 yards, 14 yards catch. So, him with having defensive back experience, I don't think that's all on him. I don't think those numbers would be too concerning. But again, it is something to note. Interior defensive line, Riley Van Poppel and Elijah Judy. Now, this was kind of the big issue with the run game against us. They didn't really generate much push up front. Nebraska's lacking that dominant force, inside to really collapse the pocket and take those numbers on. So that way you have more numbers than the offense has to block you. So that's what, That's what Nash Hutmacher did really good last year. What didn't show up on the stat sheet, he was just taking bodies and wreaking havoc in the middle and causing people to have to step up to potentially block him. So we're going to need to see a lot more of that from these guys, where these guys, they really need to start getting a push up front, especially when we get into Big Ten play. A lot of people were upset with me because I said I wanted to see more going into Michigan. Like, I was disappointed in a way because I wanted to see more going into Michigan. That's why. Michigan can run the ball. Bryce Underwood can move. Not only can he move, he can throw, right? So I wanted to have a little bit more confidence because we're not going to be able to build that too much over the next 2 weeks over these next two opponents we got. So, that's a big question mark. No sacks, though. 9 total pressures. Hurried the QB a lot, but weren't able to sack him. So I'd like to see those turn into sacks a little bit more, but 9 pressures. It's hard to be upset about that. But one, and that's with a mobile quarterback. That's the hard part about it is with a mobile quarterback, it's much harder to sack him. They're able to step up in the pocket. He's able to take off, as opposed to being able to try to find more ground, run around the pocket, dance around, and find an open receiver down the field. He's getting out of that pocket and getting across the line of scrimmage. So it's typical to be able to pressure a guy like that, but not get a ton of sacks on him. But now the QB and run defense issue, and this is where I talked about in the beginning, had a concern, because running QBs tend to be, I don't know what it is about, tend to be our kryptonite, I feel like, at least. He was able to just consistently find lanes on scrambles, especially. The edge contain, the biggest thing was our edge contain would break down. Linebackers would get caught in coverage. There was no second level spy or nothing to clean it up. And that was a big problem. There was just, once the receivers started going, it's like their receivers were just running out and running our guys off the ball. And then that was just opening space up for them to run. They were just running us off the ball. And so that had concerned me for a little bit. Overall, the defense allowed 5 yards per carry, 65 rushing yards after contact. So again, tackling needs to be better. But it wasn't just the tackling. It was only 4 misses in total. It was fit discipline, right? Being where you need to be, over pursuing, linebackers losing leverage and opening cutback lanes. So against better rushing teams, it's something that can't happen. Again, week 1, I understand that. But my job here is to kind of break down the pros and the cons. And so with that, I'm going to give you kind of my final analysis, and this kind of will tie it all together. And here's where I'm at. And when I said I was disappointed, and when we talked about being disappointed with the offense, one of the reasons being is we talked about the short part of the field, right? That was the most successful part of the field we had, but our pass grade was low because we weren't taking the highest percentage plays. Okay. Now that's just one small part of it. But overall, my baseline for what I expect out of Nebraska football under Matt Rule is higher than it used to be. And that's why I feel like I can say I'm a little disappointed, right? And hear me out of this. It's a different kind of disappointment. In the past, when we lost these games, it's kind of that gut-wrenching, here we go again feeling. The same old Nebraska collapsing at the end. When the game started to get a little away from us, or when it felt like normally that panic would have set in, I did feel a bit more confidence than usual. So don't get it twisted there. It was, again, that gut-wrenching, here we go again feeling. This time it's not that. It's looking at a team that is clearly better, clearly more talented, and clearly executing more consistently, and still saying, man, we left points out there. We could have finished that drive off stronger, because make no mistake about it, Nebraska outplayed them in basically every statistical category. The offense was improved, right? Raiola was efficient. Emmett ran hard. The transfers stepped up. The O-line showed flashes. But at the same time, some of those small mistakes kept rearing their heads. And we made the big play at the end of it. But it's the little things, right? The little details when that standard's raised that we're kind of pointing out. And so it's looking at a team that's clearly better, more talented, executing better, and still saying, yeah, we left those points out there. Outplayed them everywhere. The little things, the stall drives that kept us from punching it into the end zone and finishing with touchdowns. Those are the things I'm talking about. And on defense, yeah, the coverage held up. We forced the game-sealing interception. We just couldn't finish sacks, and we couldn't stop the quarterback run, right? Those are the margins. That's the difference between walking off with a comfortable double-digit win covering the spread versus sweating it out to the very last possession. And again, I'm not saying this to nitpick. I'm saying it because the standard has changed. The expectation has changed. We were a touchdown favorite going in, and I wanted to be able to look at a team and say, yeah, we covered that. Vegas underestimated us. I wanted to make a statement early in year 3 of the rule era because I know over the next 2 weeks, there's not really a chance to make a statement. I wanted to come out and prove, national TV, make a statement. And when I say make a statement, it's not just winning. That's probably me, though. Again, my expectations may be too high. Not too high necessarily, but my expectations being high, I let myself get disappointed when I should have been happy in some areas with what we saw. And that's where my disappointment comes from. So don't hear this as negativity. Hear it as analysis, because overall, this was good football. This was progress for Nebraska in 2022 or 2023. Probably lose that exact same game. This team did. They found a way, and that matters. But if we're going to be the Nebraska, we all believe that we can be the Nebraska, that rule builds by year 3. We got to finish those details. Drive consistency, red zone execution, self-inflicted mistakes, penalties on the goal line, tightening up against mobile quarterbacks, right? Those things that we were worried about coming in, worried about that mobile quarterback and not being able to stop that, that still leaves that question in our mind. Interior defensive line was questioned. Still leaves a little of that question in our mind. Again, team's way better than it was. I'm not questioning that. But that's where the growth still has to happen. So I'll throw this out to you guys watching. Did you feel the same way? Right? Did you come out of that game with your baseline raised, or was your baseline raised going into it? Or was it just relief that we survived, but a little frustration that we didn't dominate in the way we could have? Or are you just saying, hey, a win's a win. Let's not overthink it. Just let's not overthink it. Let's move on to week 2, week 3, and then let the rest play itself out. Because again, this team is going to grow. It is week 1. I'm not saying this team isn't going to grow over the course of the season, but that's kind of the way I break it down. So I want you to drop that in the comments, because for me, I think this just shows how far Nebraska has come. The fact that we can win, still walk away knowing that there's another gear that we haven't even hit yet. And for that, I think year 3 under Matt Rule still is different. Nothing's changed in my opinion. Nothing's changed in my mind. My record prediction is still confident. I'm still confident in that record prediction as I was before. But that's the difference. Nebraska has made improvement, yes, but the standard is raised, which is a good thing. We are trying to go from, we were a bad team, we're a good team. Now we're trying to become a great team. And Thursday was the start of that. So that being said, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.